All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to another episode of the Remarkable Coach podcast. As always, I'm your host, Michael Pacheco. And today with me, I have Dr. Sam Jennings. Dr. Sam is a stealth coach of over 20 years. He serves leaders who lead leaders through strategy, brainstorming, and coaching. Did I get that right?
It's all good.
Little bit of a tongue twister. And Sam
Right.
helps his clients resolve the tough stuff to get to the fun stuff. So Sam, I always like to start the podcast by inviting our guests to talk a little bit more about yourself in your own words. But first, I have to ask, what is a stealth coach? Tell us
Right.
about that.
Yeah. So I was going to start by unpacking that. And, first of all, I really appreciate you having me on here. This is a great opportunity and a good conversation. I'm just looking forward to our discussion. And
Absolutely.
secondarily, thanks for just jumping in with Sam. A lot of people ask, is it Dr. Sam, Dr. Jennings? I'm just a guy who wrote a thing. I'm just Sam. So I appreciate that. So the stealth coach, that came into play because I've been coaching for decades. I just didn't know it was called coaching.
Hmm.
My approach to supervision, to leadership, has always been an empowering standpoint. So I ask a lot of questions. Even if we don't meet the mark, I typically don't come barking in and saying, y'all messed it up. Say, okay, we didn't do it. What happened? Talk to me about this. And they say, okay, what did we learn? How do we move forward? Um, and once I was pretty much wrapped up my career in higher education, I learned about coaching. I was like, oh, that's what this is. I thought that was some cute thing that celebrities got. Turns out it's pretty dang effective for a lot of people. I wish I'd known about this earlier.
Uh-huh.
The stealthiness is just, it's always been there. I just didn't have a name for it.
Okay. Interesting. So why coaching? What got you into coaching?
Yeah. So I made a transition out of my career. I was in the Midwest. I moved out of Portland, Oregon at the turn of the century for, 2 to 3 years. And then 20 some years later, there we were still in the Midwest. And in
Yeah.
those 20 years, we started to raise kids. And my parents, who were in the Spokane, Washington area, were just getting on in years. And I decided to ask the question to my wiser half, what are we waiting for?
Mhm.
No, nothing's going to get better in terms of health and aging and so forth. And the kids don't know their grandparents as well. So why don't we go? And so we pulled up stakes out of the Midwest, resigned our jobs, sold our house, and left. There
Mhm.
was no real plan. So then when I made the transition, to be completely blunt, had a hard time finding traditional work because I've been a dean of students. So people didn't want to hire me to be an assistant director or a director of a program because I would, in their mind, overexperienced, would get bored, would leave us quickly.
Sure.
And then making a career pivot into spaces like human resources. Well, I never worked in the HR suite, even though I did the full life cycle hiring and evaluation process. Okay, great. If I can't find somebody to trust my skills, I'll hire myself. So I started, opening my business in order to coach college students. And I giggle because I enjoy working with college students and helping them untangle the red tape to get through their process. So I placed one ad on Facebook and thought, well, the parents are going to beat a path to my door because a dean of students will help their kid through school. Of course, they're going to want this. Absolutely. Yeah, I placed my ad and nobody cared. Didn't matter. So I started unpacking what was it I liked about that opportunity. It was the individual conversation. How do I help this one person reimagine their situation and their future to get to solutions they didn't know were even out there? And as a higher education administrator, I could pull levers and I could twist knobs, but helping people who I have no control over what they do or
Mhm.
how to get there, it's empowering to help them see that they can in fact empower themselves and get moving. And once I realized that was frankly what I've been doing forever, it's like, oh, this is a career path. Okay, this is my track now. I'm doing this, and it's been uh, a complete dramatic change in everything, including how I help people. It's just been so much fun. And the transition has been great. And I just wish I discovered it earlier.
I love it. I love it. So you mentioned and we talked a little bit about this offline before I hit record, but you mentioned Spokane and Portland. Are you originally from the Pacific Northwest?
I am. I grew up in North Idaho and left the state, for vacations and so forth, but moved out for the first time at 25. And then from there, didn't move back until just pre-pandemic.
Hmm.
So growing up in North Idaho had all the things you might expect were there. You know,
Hmm.
the quote unquote rugged outdoorsness. You know, I was big camping and fishing, never hunting. I was terrible at it, just horrible. But I moved out, and then you know, life changes and things happen. But come back and realize how much I missed some topography, where I could, you know, not just see a mountain, but maybe go walk up it just the same. So
Hmm.
it's been good to be back. Plus, of course, being near family again.
Nice. Very cool. Um, yeah, I ask, of course, because as we mentioned, but for those listening and watching on YouTube, I live in the Washington State Cascades, so the scenery behind you looks very familiar. It's definitely a Pacific Northwest scene, it looks like to me.
Yeah, absolutely. This was at the culmination of the 1800 vertical climb, and with my oldest and I, just hiked up a mountain that we said we are going to do, and we had one more weekend before we moved them to college. And okay, let's do it. And this aging body told me about it for a few days afterward, but it was definitely worth the hike
Always worth it for a special moment with family, I think.
for
Uh,
sure.
that's awesome. Sam, tell us who are your clients today? Who's your
Right.
ideal?
So in the intro, you mentioned I like to help leaders lead leaders, and specifically, I really appreciate the rewards, the struggles, and the experience that experienced leaders have
Mhm.
when they're trying to lead people who are also trying to lead people. Because I have a background in job satisfaction in terms of my research,
Mhm.
also just the notion that burnout is a big dang deal everywhere. And there's not a lot of reason for all of it. Some of it, it's going to happen. If a person's doing a job that mismatches their skill set, they're going to burn out. But if it's about human behavior, why do we tolerate this? There's no reason, no business reason, and no humanity reason to accept that work just sucks. So if I can help a leader empower their team to then empower their team, then we're changing culture of that work environment. And how incredible is that to
Mhm.
give all these people a new experience where going to work, it's just going to work. It's not going to work and then chugging Pepto for 6 hours out of the 8 that you're there, but just making sure that you do what you can, you have purpose, what you do matters, and you feel like you fit.
Mhm.
That doesn't seem like it's too much to ask, frankly.
So is following that logic, is one of your focuses in your coaching on, let's say, stress management or resilience, that kind of thing? Or
That's definitely a piece of that puzzle.
okay.
And to be even more laser focused on it, the thing I've learned I really appreciate about my coaching conversations is helping a client through a very difficult situation. So, to for example, a client may say, "I've got to go talk to somebody about their performance, usually underperformance, or about a possible reassignment or something else that they don't want to hear too much of,"
Hmm.
and they're twisted up about it, rightly so, because having those conversations can be difficult. So I ask them, "What do you plan to say?" And they kind of wander around a little bit and throw out some words and ask, "Are you going to say that precisely?" Well, no, I'd say something different. Lay it on me. So we go through a couple iterations,
Hmm.
and oftentimes with their permission, I'll say, "Try this on. If it lands, let me know." And I'll say something, and then they start scribbling feverishly. And they say, "Oh, that's so good. I wish I could have just recorded that." So, okay, that's nice, and I'm flattered, but we're different people in different circumstances. I always want you to think through how you would do it with a little different approach than maybe you started with, because even you said when you started, it wasn't exactly a good feel.
Hmm.
And most every time they come back the next session and say, "So glad we talked it through because then I had this conversation and it went very well." They
Hmm.
saw the point, they were upset, but they also knew I was supporting them. And if we accept that difficult situations are going to be contentious, then they will be. But if we say difficult situations can be resolved and moderated in such a way that we all feel like we had a positive outcome, then that's a pretty good place to work and a good place to have your daytime experience.
I love it. So you're using essentially like kind of prompting and a little bit of role playing as a tool within
Mm-hmm.
your coaching to help work your clients through these contentious situations.
Oh, absolutely. Uh, there's little that's more effective than just actual practice. We can
Mhm.
talk about how you'll say it, talk about what to say, but unless you try it on, boy, you get in a situation and get nervous and then get stumbly and then it comes off rough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It helps. It definitely when you're going through. especially if you know you're walking into a difficult situation, a difficult conversation, whatever it is, you know you're walking into that. It in my experience, it always pays to have practice that in front of a mirror with a coach, like whatever you got,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like make use of practice it somehow, figure out some way to get some reps in before you walk into that room. And things, tend to go work out a lot better that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no, I hate to always go back to sports metaphors, but there's no highly successful athlete who doesn't practice
Yeah.
with people who are as good as them, better, worse, whatever. They just practice, practice, practice. And like
Yeah.
you said, in front of a mirror, yeah, people playing basketball, taking shots out of the field all the time because you still have to do that piece even without a defender. Just
Yeah.
try, try, try.
Yeah. Yeah. When there's a metaphor other than sports that everyone can relate to so easily, I would be curious to know what that is. I think that's why we keep returning to sports, right? Because
Exactly.
it's a little bit universal. Even if you don't really follow sports, you kind of get it. Yeah,
Right, right. You get the concept, a game, a sport, anything that requires teamwork and practice. Yeah, it's all in that package.
for sure. So Sam, where do you get your clients? How do you market yourself? How do you market your services?
Yeah. So I've got two specific spaces. One was with a company called Lingo Live, and I'm a subcontractor for them. So they do all the heavy lifting, and I work with the folks that they bring in, which is fabulous. I've learned so much being able to be connected with that organization. And then secondarily, I've tried a few ads and tried, I haven't tried one of those cute 10x your business kinds of things, but
Hmm.
I've done a few uh, social networking things, but primarily it's the in-person networking where I'm finding most traction.
Really?
And I find the thing I've learned a lot and I had to really wrestle with was this notion of know, like, and trust.
Hmm.
And then, so you have that in one hand. The other hand, they say, don't take no personally. Say, okay, except if they don't know, like, or trust me, the answer is no. How do I not take that personally? And it took a lot of time, but what I finally got to was it wasn't the like or the trust they were saying no to, it was the no.
Uh-huh.
So the idea that no means not now means they don't know me enough yet. And
Yeah.
if they get to see who I am and if we fit, great. If they get to see who I am and we don't, that's fine too. But when people have conversations with me and when I share some of my stories in networking events, I've got a few clients who said, the way you said that was exactly the kind of person I want to work with. And being able to take those relationships and turn it into exactly what I wanted, which is getting business in my backyard, in addition to my online folks.
Hmm. So they say with marketing, they say that there's the rule of seven, where
Mm-hmm.
a prospect has to be exposed to a brand or to a company or to a coach, right? 7 times
Mm-hmm.
before that, before they're willing to buy. Generally, this is a
Right.
rule, right? That's the bell curve. There's outliers on either
Yep.
side. So once you do in-person networking, you've shaken hands with someone. How do you follow up with them? Are you active on social
Mhm.
media? Do you follow up with them on the phone, via email? Do you have other methods of getting 6 more exposures or 6 more impressions with your prospects that you meet at these network events?
Right. So very clumsily, I don't have a specific follow-up plan for the folks that I meet. Of course, we meet and greet, shake hands, exchange cards. I do a follow-up email, and then I'm on LinkedIn every day,
Yeah.
and so that's always present. But they may not be. So in those cases, I may say, "Hey, had a great conversation. Would you care to get coffee sometime? Maybe we do, maybe we don't." But then I just make sure to touch base next time that we're in a in-person networking event.
Hmm.
And for me, for my personality, I like the more organic conversations. If
Hmm.
I feel like I'm pushing it, then it feels like I'm being the used car salesman. No offense to used car salesmen, but the notion being that I I really want the relationship to be there, and then if it turns into coaching, then good. And I
Sure.
know that's not quite what a lot of people do, but um, I need to feel good about what I do and how I do it. And if I don't have a relationship, I just dive into a contract with somebody, it's not going to feel the same.
Yeah, I think that's super important for coaching, especially for coaches, especially really for any business, but especially for a business like coaching, because the nature of the beast is one-on-one many times, right? And it's
Right.
it's mindset, and it's discussing feelings, and it's very personal work. And so if
Right.
it's hard to, you can't go into that through an advertisement, right? You almost have to build a relationship in order to convert a prospect into a client.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, I think that's a healthy attitude. The trick with that, of course, on the flip side, is that it's not always easy to go out to coffee with someone 7 times or something like that, for
Right.
example, right?
Right.
So yeah,
For
but
sure.
I think yeah, building relationships is definitely the most important, or the right way to be doing it, I think. Are you working primarily with people local in your local area right now?
The clients I've earned independently are predominantly local. I've
Yeah,
got a couple online
yeah,
that I've got through for various ways. And the folks through, like I mentioned, Lingo Live there
yeah.
around the world, which has really been able to broaden horizons. And the bit you mentioned about people spilling some of their deepest, darkest secrets. When I do
Mm-hmm.
an intake with a client, a Lingo Live one in particular, because I haven't ever met them before.
Mm-hmm.
There's an intake process, but I say I've got a bunch of questions for you, but before I go rooting through your sock drawer, what kind of questions do you have for me? And just
Right.
make sure they know that I'm going to be vulnerable first, because then
Yep.
it's going to be flipped around. They're going to be answering all kinds of things. So, you know,
Super smart.
there is a way. Oh, pardon me.
I said super smart.
Oh well, gosh.
Opening with vulnerability for your, like being the first to be vulnerable is going to bring down their wall, bring down their defenses, and allow them
Right,
to open up more easily.
right. And my point of this is to share that there is a way to get that trust built up quickly, but it's almost an artificial relationship in that particular case. I couldn't recommend that as a hey, how you doing? Ask me a bunch of questions. That's a rough chit chat kind of discussion.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. What we like to do at Boxer for our clients, frequently what we'll do is work on starting a relationship with, a phone call, a scheduled call, a discovery call, a chemistry call, something like that.
Hmm.
Maybe some chatting in LinkedIn direct messages or something like that.
Right.
And then just being active on social media with incredibly authentic content. And that's the key, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
video content is fantastic because you get facial expressions, you get voice and vocal emoting, you get gesticulation, you
Right.
get all of the things. So
Right.
you really get, with video content that is highly authentic, you really get a good impression and a good idea of who this person is, who they are, what they are, you know, as you're with the content that our clients create. We always encourage them to talk about who they are, what their values are, who they work with, why they work with those people, and it really creates. I mean, it's you could call it what did you call it before, a fake relationship, um,
Right.
because you're kind of, it's not really a relationship, but what it is it's building that knowing and that trust,
Hmm.
and ideally that
Right.
likability, right? Because
For sure.
they get an idea of your personality and who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. So,
Right.
yeah, if you're not already trying some stuff like that, I might recommend just being active on social media, and
Right.
especially with video content. It's really a great way to to get up to that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those 7 touch points.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. That's a great recommendation. I had been active on video for a while, a short while,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then got a cold, and I had no speaking voice that was worth putting on a recording, and I stopped, and then just didn't pick it back up. And it's one of those things that it's easy to get out of habit, but getting back in it, it's just like starting fresh again.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, man, I might even, I have seen content creators, I've seen business people, personal brands, people who are creating personal brands. They'll get a head cold and they'll just go on anyway, and they'll be blowing there,
Right.
and they're like, I feel like crap. I am
Right.
feeling absolutely horrible. I do not want to work right now, but I had this really great idea and I wanted to share it with you guys.
Right.
And then they
That's
go on
awesome.
into their pitch or something. Everyone doesn't
Yeah.
have to do that, right?
Sure.
Some,
Sure.
especially, some executive coaches that are working with kind of, high performers,
Right.
they maybe want to maintain a higher level of professionalism. Um,
Right.
but at the same time, yeah, that authenticity tends to ring true
for sure.
even through social media. It's
Yeah,
interesting, the stuff that you can
right.
do with it now. Yeah. Sam, what does a typical engagement with you look like? Do you work with
Mhm.
your clients? Do you do like a 6 month engagement, a year-long engagement? Do you just do it like maybe month to month, or what does that
Mhm.
typically look like?
Right. So typically I've got a month to month, and I've got a package designed. I just haven't quite gone out and done the hard work of making sure folks know it's out there yet. Um, but it's gotten easier and easier for me to do the re-upping of the contract. I know people talk
Mhm.
about that being the most difficult part, but if I contract with somebody for just 4 sessions, get the session three, and say, okay, well, next one is either a wrap up or a continuation. Would you care to sign
Mhm.
up for another month? And so far, it's been yes, please. That doesn't mean that's the answer forever, and of course, it can't go on forever.
Sure.
Uh, the best, well, not best, a better case scenario would be minimum three months.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just haven't quite got to that point yet, but so far, it's been effective enough.
I like it. I like it. One idea that you might try, I'm just going to throw this out there,
Please.
is doing a 3 month opening,
Hmm.
like a 3 month contract to open with, and then month to month after that. And that
Oh,
way
sure.
it gives you, as a coach, it gives you a chance to gain a little bit of traction while you're working with the client, right?
Right.
And a chance to make more of an impact in that first three
Hmm.
months.
Absolutely.
Um, cool. Tell us a little bit about your coaching style.
Coaching style. I started off as a purist, only
Hmm.
questions, only open-ended questions, and then quickly realized that is a technique, and the ICF is going to really appreciate that kind of approach,
Hmm.
um, International Coaching Federation.
Sure.
But sometimes a yes/no question is necessary. And so I mentioned that because once in a while a client would be kind of wandering around and never really getting anywhere. And so one question to anchor them: is this
Mhm.
something you want to do? If they say yes, okay, now we're anchored. Now we got to go from there. If they say no, okay, great. Then where do you want to go? Because all this wandering around won't get us any place.
Sure.
That, hold that in one hand. On the other hand, I do like what I tell my clients: we're going to take a walk together,
Mhm.
and you tell me where you want to go, and let's just go. Let's explore and find out. Because one of my skills that I didn't even know I had until enough people told me, I make connections
Uh-huh.
that most people don't make. And I didn't know it. And I'm not trying to be, the humble brag, but it's just how my brain works. So they'll tell stories about various things. And I remember one specifically, we got done with some storytelling 45 minutes in about unrelated topics. I asked a client, so, thank you for sharing that with me. What's the common thread through those stories you told me?
Mhm.
And they thought and they thought, and I said, well, was it this? Was it that? And got to the point that I said, what I heard was you making rationalizations why things aren't going how you want them to go in every
Mhm.
case. Like, whoa, nobody said that before. So, okay, maybe, but is it accurate?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, totally. It's okay then. How do we move on from that point? So, folks may feel like they're just talking, but I'm paying attention, trying to make sure I'm hearing who they are, how they are, and being able to serve them more effectively because of that.
That's great. Yeah, I think making connections is the mark of a good coach. Because I mean, that's almost your job, right? Is to
Hmm.
to understand, because you're coming in as this third party, as a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of ears, and you're able to approach any given situation that you're in with from a very different perspective than they're able to approach it from.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
you can like be able to hear, three disparate things and make a connection between them. I think that's crazy valuable for people, especially if it's accurate.
Right. Yeah. I stole from another coach. How's that land for you? Like, ooh, I like
Uh-huh.
that phrasing.
Uh-huh.
Just does it stick? Is there anything there? And if there's not, okay, let's agree that it was an interesting discussion, but let's move on to something more productive. But I agree that one of the phrases I picked up too from somebody smarter than me is you can't read the label if you're inside the box. So, okay, well then let's examine this as close as we can from where we are and see where we go from here.
I like it. I like it. What sort of things did you first struggle with when you first started coaching?
Oh, that's a good question and very easy for me to answer. Coming trying to deprogram myself from the solution provider. So I'm
Okay.
listening to the tale, the story, the struggle, and instead of getting to the point where here's what I can do for you to help you solve this thing, because I couldn't. That wasn't even a possibility. You know, as in my deanly ways, I could say I can help you unenroll. I can help you, you know, petition the faculty. I can help you petition me because like you're appealing my finding, whatever it is. I don't have that leverage anymore. So reminding myself that I am truly here to empower them,
Uh-huh.
and all I can do is observe and guide. That's the best I can offer. Uh, but it took some time to realize that not not that it was a limitation, but it was empowering for me and for them. So I couldn't come swooping in with a cape and say, "Here's the answer." Nope. Here's a whole bunch of problems. Which one do you want to tackle first?
Yeah. That's funny. You're not the first coach that I've heard cite that as a struggle.
Right.
And they're all men.
Right. Right.
Just want to get in there and solve the problem. You know,
Yeah.
it's that male. I don't want. It's not bravado. It's just a male trait, I guess. You know, and then
Right.
sometimes a bigger hammer is not always the right tool.
For sure. Yeah. You know, and to that point, when I was like, I was kind of teasing with my deanly ways, there were levers I could pull that were kind of behind the scenes. I could go ask for favors that no student could. So it's very much a role power move, not as a flex, but just as a, they don't have access to this. I am the access to that.
Hmm.
Where in anymore, I'm not the access to anything besides more in-depth understanding. The
Hmm.
action is fully on them at that point forward.
Yeah. Tell us about some of your big wins, Sam, with some wins that you've been able to get for your coaches.
Yeah, one of my favorites is working with a client, and I forget for how long. And we were having good conversation, and they were sharing not quite as pointed stories as this is how I succeeded, but rather this is something I did that before coaching I would have done this way, and now I do it this other way. That's much more effective, and they phrase it something like, "I feel like it's a skill I have now."
Hmm.
I said, "Okay, let's name that. What is this?" And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Name it. You choose. What is this to you? What does that mean to you?" And they eyes got big and said, "Oh, this is what leadership coaching is." I said, "Yeah, this is it. And you're building the skills to get there, and you're doing the work. I'm just kind of helping you down the path." Like, oh my gosh, this is a game changer. Like, fabulous. Now let's keep on down this path. You know, some coaches will probably talk about companies that have, you know, duplicate, you know, double, triple, quadruple finances and income and so forth. I really just love helping people have that aha moment and
Hmm.
the awakening that they can be a little better tomorrow than they are today. Once they get that, it's like, oh man, I've done my part. This is so good.
That's great. That's great. Do you have any other wins you want to share with us, or?
Oh gosh. Yeah, specifically had a client who knew that they had some struggle with language, written and spoken,
Hmm.
and had to have some email correspondence with various folks. And so we spent an entire session going through email.
What kind of struggle?
And the struggle was, am I being direct enough? Too direct? Does it say what I want to say?
Uh,
Here's a message I want to make, but I'm not sure it's there. And to their credit, they're open enough to take that kind of critique and feedback. And me being not just outside of their bubble, outside of their industry, I've got no idea. In some cases, outside of their target culture. So I just
hmm.
ask questions. What do you understand about your audience? Tell me more about this. And
Hmm.
say, from a third party, I read this, and here's what I understand about it. Is that accurate? It's like, oh no, that's not close. So okay, so what is it? And they rewrite. And after we had that session, the follow up was that each thing we went through landed so well with the people he's sending it to, and we probably wouldn't have gotten there without that. And again, this is more of an interpersonal kind of win because when my clients feel and are empowered and successful under their own um, volition, that's what I want for them is to be better because they did it, not because I had some magical answer that worked once in a particular situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned specifically it is very that's very like interpersonal work. Do you
Mhm.
have some way to measure your clients rather? Do you have some way to measure success when you go in to
Mhm.
work with someone on intangibles?
Right. The success is typically the client's comfort.
Uh-huh.
So I've had multiple clients discuss discomfort with public speaking in different capacities, and they'll share reasons why. Sometimes those reasons are not invented by them, but maybe um, over amplified.
Mm-hmm.
So people will think this about me, think that about me, and so I ask, well, how do you know? Well, I think it's true. So that's valuable, but what have you seen in other people's behavior to make you believe they believe that?
Mm-hmm.
There's oftentimes nothing there. So the measurement then is going from near panic in a public speaking space to into a space where they're confident and maybe stumbly, maybe not perfect, but definitely feeling better about the whole thing. And
Mm-hmm.
when they recognize that, that's a win for them as well because they get to go do their job without having to have anxiety all the time.
I like it. Do you use like 360 assessments or anything like that to gauge how a leader is doing from the top and the bottom and the sides?
I haven't yet, and I haven't in my role, but that is strangely enough why I named my company what it is, 360 Clarity, because I had experience with 360 evaluations and I love them
Uh-huh.
just for the reason you indicated.
Yeah.
Um, Being able to get good quality, unvarnished feedback from direct reports and peers is huge.
Yeah.
And I've got this position where I want to hear it. Not everybody does, but it's such a big piece of the puzzle to fully understand how a leader is affecting people compared to the boss says what they say with their arguably sliver of a perspective on the world.
Uh-huh. Nice. Let's talk about we talked about wins. Let's talk about failures.
Right,
What's a time where things have not gone according to plan and you've just learned something that you felt was very, very valuable?
right. Um, when I think I understand a situation, I will play it back to the client. So this is where I think I understand.
Uh-huh.
Tell me about this. And
Smart.
there's been a couple of times when I've done that exact thing, and I say, "Am I close?" And like, "No, not really." Like, "Oh man,
Not not at
okay,
all. You're way out of
right." So
there.
no, yeah. So and those are small potatoes in terms of wins and losses, but to me, it's a loss because it is a perceived by me
Hmm.
credibility issue that I didn't pick up what they're putting down in the right way. I can't believe I just said that out loud.
Hmm.
And secondarily, it is time spent on conversation that for whatever reason didn't stick with me. And so all that time is not fully wasted, but not to recalibrate what I understand about it to make it make sense, to
Sure.
serve them more appropriately. And so far, I haven't had a client that we discussed a plan and they went away and executed the plan and then it failed miserably. Thankfully, I haven't had that. But
Hmm.
I've had a few clients who've we've got a plan and they go and they execute it partially.
Hmm.
But thankfully, the folks I work with, they're self-aware enough. They say, "Yeah, I didn't do my part," and that's time for me to support. Okay, what did happen? Tell me about the successes, and then if it didn't work, yeah, what happened there? Not to say you're bad, of course, but what got in your way? Because we have to have that conversation. Um, but not to turn into a humble brag. The fails though, those are rough because our whole job is to listen to people, and when you demonstrate that you didn't pick it, you didn't get it, like, oh, well, gee whiz.
Yeah, but I mean, think about what's the alternative, right? The alternative is to just go directly into the advising part or the guidance
Oh
part,
my gosh.
and
Yeah.
you've got the whole premise wrong, right? So I
Yep.
feel like the fact that you're even asking those calibrating questions to make sure that you're understanding the map of the territory before you start helping them navigate through it,
Right.
that's good. That's a good thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The process isn't bad. I don't care for when the success is because it failed.
Uh-huh.
I prefer it to recite back what I think I heard and they go, yeah, that's it. Great. Now we can go on to some action.
Sure.
Versus, is that it? Oh gosh, no. Okay, let's do it again.
So what does it look like when that fails? When you say is that it and they're just like no, that's not what I was trying to say. Do
Right.
you then have them say it again? Can you try and summarize that for me again, or do you have how do you approach that?
Right. So I don't want to leave them with the impression I need to be right. So I don't ask specifically what I get right, what I get wrong, but rather um, I'm pretty blunt about it. Okay, clearly I missed the point, and I don't mean to make you repeat your whole story, but baseline it for me. Talk to me about where we actually are, and then let's fill in the details after that. And
Hmm.
once we do that, it tends to get us pretty much on track. And I use
Yeah.
that technique as well when clients are telling me the stories like I like, but even the stories are so disparate. I'm not even making my own connection. So I make them, okay, what's the baseline? What are you seeking here in
Hmm.
this conversation? And once you get there, it's okay. Now with that, here's what I heard in that theme, which is tends to be pretty effective.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think that's smart too. I like to when I'm having those conversations too, it's important to understand. I'll ask what is your ideal outcome from this conversation?
Mm,
Like what are
right, right,
where's the ideal destination that we're trying to get to so that I can understand that part of it and then understand the story and then we can work on that bridge.
right. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I do the same kind of thing in terms of, the big goal. I'm sure you do this as well. One of my favorites is you don't need the answer, but what's one thing you could do to get toward that big goal? And so it's just that baby step that really opens up the conversation to all the possibilities versus tell me, what are you going to do to get there? Oh, well, there's a million things. One, what's one? Let's start with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Help it, if this was simple, what would it look like? What would it look like if this was easy?
Right. Yeah.
Just pick just one thing. Forget the millions of things. We don't have to list them all.
Nobody has time for that. So get down to a
What
few.
what recommendations would you have for new coaches who are just getting into the business?
Hmm. Follow-up question. Are you looking at coaches in terms of the coaching or in terms of the business side, as far as the things to look at?
Either or both. Dealer's
Right.
choice.
I knew you were going to say that. I shouldn't have even asked the question.
Bartender's
Um,
choice, Sam.
yeah, exactly. So, for new coaches being coach in the coaching space, one thing that I would recommend keep in mind is, like I mentioned, the temptation to um, jump into solutions. I have some other coaching friends, they talk about getting on the field with their clients. And you may have expertise in that space. You may even have a brilliant idea, but we're not executing the plan here. It's not us. So with using that metaphor of being on the field, I would say at best, we're watching the tape. And that's not even quite accurate. So
Hmm.
keep in mind, we have a very filtered view of the world.
Hmm.
And so what we think is good advice is tempered with somebody else's perspective.
Hmm.
So resist the idea of jumping in and helping because it's contextually, you're not there yet. Business wise, I'm not going to repeat what everybody else says because it's out there. It's for everybody to appreciate. Um, from my own perspective, if you as a coach are not running your business in the way you can appreciate and value and be authentic, then you're not running your business yet. You're not really showing up as who you need to be. It took me quite a while to get there, frankly. Once I started being a little more authentic, a little less protected, I started landing more clients because I saw who I am and saw that's a person I want to work with versus just some dude in a cute jacket that says very vanilla things. Well, that'll appeal to some folks, but it wasn't who I am and wasn't showing people the kind of coach they were getting.
So two things. One, I love that. And two, I want to push back on it a little bit. So I think
Please.
also, yeah, so the ideas of authenticity and vulnerability, I believe in very, very, very strongly.
Mm,
And it's something that I think a lot of people are talking about. And it feels, I think, if you're not super familiar with the concepts, if you haven't read Brene Brown or someone like that, right?
hmm.
You maybe it feels like a very nebulous thing.
Sure.
Well, I'm recording it, so of course it's authentic because it's me. I'm recording it, right? So what is it? What does that actually look like? Becoming that
Right.
transition, becoming authentic, becoming vulnerable. What does it actually look like?
Right. That's excellent follow-up question. What it looks like, we'll start with the negative. What it doesn't look like. If a new coach is starting their business, put out their shingle, their LLC is all set up, and their brain is saying, I can coach anybody in any situation.
Hmm.
That's not authentic because you're not focusing on who are the people you're going to connect with the most to help most effectively.
Hmm.
That's the absence of authenticity. When you're more authentic, you're speaking about your values, your dreams, your wishes, and some of your failures, and being able to share that. So to be very, very specific about an example, when I was working for a university, I couldn't show all my cards because it wasn't right. It wouldn't have been appropriate.
Yeah.
And specifically, if I tipped one way or other on a say political spectrum, how do I know that the next person that would serve isn't hearing that and being upset by that, and I can't help that person? I need to do everything I could to get every human through my doorway to help them the best I could. But this is not that. This is a
Mhm.
whole different beast. And I get to show up and be a panelist on the LGBTQ support group and not worry about if I'm going to make somebody upset, because if I do, chances are decent they wouldn't be my people to work with anyway. And so the authenticity is, and I appreciate, in fact, I really, really appreciate that you had that kind of as a buzzword that's sort of gotten, absent of definition.
Yeah.
If your everyday self and your work self don't overlap almost 100%, there's going to be stress and
Mhm.
frustration. And the farther those things are apart, the more stress and frustration there'll be. If somebody's going on their own, why add stress and frustration when you can reduce it
Mhm.
just by not having to code switch all the time and be who you are in your personal and in your professional life?
That's great. Yeah, that's a good answer. I like that. Yeah, it is though too, right? It's totally become a buzzword, and it can, I
Mhm.
think it can feel very nebulous and like, what the hell does that even mean anymore? Because
Right.
it's everybody is talking about it. So it's interesting to it's an interesting exercise, I think, to think about
Mhm.
what that actually looks like to really truly
Right.
be authentic.
Right.
And I like the idea, I love the idea of a Venn diagram of your home life, your personal self, and your
Right.
business self. And there should be a
Right.
lot of overlap in the middle where you know, you're not pretending, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I made a super cute GIF with that exact thing. So the overlap starts. There's a little smiley face down the bottom. It's all smiley and happy. And
Uh-huh.
the farther the circles, the less they overlap, the farther they get apart, the more crusty the face gets. And I was intentional about making it unhappy and sad until it gets to be decoupled entirely. Then it's just um, devoid of any emotion.
Uh-huh.
Because I think when people have all that energy wrapped up in not being true, now they're not being true at work or at home. They're just present,
Yeah.
and there's no engagement, no purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting topic. And I want to bring up actually one other thing that comes to mind. I'm reading a book right now by a coach by the name of Todd Herman. Are you familiar with Todd Herman?
I'm not.
So he wrote a book. He works with athletes primarily, but he works with, I'm sorry, he wrote a book called The Alter Ego Effect.
Hmm.
And it's about athletes that he has worked with. The book is about how you can use it in business as well. Um, but the idea of having an alter ego so that you can turn on at some
Hmm.
point, for example. So I think, uh, Superman versus Clark Kent,
Sure.
for example, right? Superman is the authentic guy, right? He's the alien from Krypton. And then he
Hmm.
puts on the glasses and becomes Clark Kent so that he can blend in with us lowly earthlings.
Right.
And I think there is a lot, I truly believe that there's a lot of value in alter egos and being able to use that to kind of engage a superpower, right? I think we've
Hmm.
all got some kind of, superpower innately, and we can use these alter egos to engage it, um, and the and how does that, again? It's just an interesting exercise to think about how that fits in with authenticity.
Right. Right. So not using such an elegant metaphor, I've talked about let me back up. In my diversity trainings, I talk about intercultural competence. There's this whole continuum of people who are denying there's even a thing out there.
Uh-huh.
There's no racism. It's just invented onto adaptation, where people change behavior to fit a new cultural context. And
Huh.
so folks will ask, well, that's inauthentic, except it's not. So, for example, if you go to a fine dining restaurant and you get the menu, you make your order, you wait, you have chit chat, they bring the food, you enjoy it, and things are great. Wonderful, good experience. Compare that to going to the drive through at your favorite fast food joint, where you go up, you screech through a speaker, they give you some food, and you eat while you're driving.
Huh.
At the core of it, you're putting nutrients in your body. That's the same. But your behavior, your expectations are fully different,
Yep.
although you're doing the same thing.
Huh.
It doesn't make you inauthentic. It means you're able to change for the context of the situation.
Huh.
So I'd say, yeah, Clark and Superman can't show up at the same time in the same space for the same reason. Of
Sure.
course not. And it's not any less authentic. It's just appropriate for the circumstance.
Huh.
And if people can appreciate that transition in themselves, um, when, where, and how appropriate, then that's perfectly fine because things do change around them. If people say I am who I am wherever I am, okay, but I'm guessing your lounge on the couch self is not your boardroom self.
Right.
There's differences because of the
Exactly.
circumstances that you're in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's yeah, that's I mean that's basically that's totally it, right? Is have adapting for different circumstances. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, the when I'm hanging out with my daughter on the couch, in my jammies, I'm not
Right.
I'm not ready to hop on stage and give a speech in front of 2,000 coaches. I mean, it's not going to happen.
Right. Exactly.
Mean it's not authentic. It just means that there's different modes maybe that people get into. Yeah, I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We could talk about this forever. I want to be
I'm sure. Yeah.
respectful. I want to be respectful of your time, Sam. Tell us about the leadership adventure.
Right. So the leadership adventure is a package I've put together where an individual is looking at a small list of things they're facing, whether it is difficult discussions, maybe a hard decision they have to make, maybe they're new to the leadership role, um, and they know they need some kind of help. A boss can be helpful, but some employees can be totally vulnerable with their boss. That's fine. Shouldn't do that with your direct reports. That's oftentimes inappropriate. And even your peers, they don't go to work to help their colleagues through the muck. Um, so my program is such that leaders would sign up and then be able to work through those struggles, particularly for a transition to a new role. You can't tell folks that you're feeling uncomfortable or that you don't quite know what you're doing. You thought it was X, but it turns out to be Y. But
Hmm.
you can't tell somebody who's not involved, not writing your evaluation, not doing your 360, just here to help to be with you on the path. And why
Hmm.
it's a leadership adventure is because it's never finished
Hmm.
and it's not um, to be taken either lightly or as a given. There will be changes, there will be things you can't predict. So let's go through this together. And what better way to help somebody be successful than to be with them on that journey and share that adventure with them, very much on the side. I mean, way out on the side, but still being able to help them navigate their path and enjoy it and really develop through the process rather than get through it. And I used to use that kind of phrasing, through education. We have to get through the core courses. Well, yes, but maybe you enjoy it as much as you possibly can and get from it what you can to then move on more effectively. And so I've moved away from the get through to learn through because
Hmm.
folks will be learning and adjusting their whole journey. At least I hope they do.
I love it. Where can our listeners and viewers go to learn more about this program?
Yeah, it's on my website at 360-clarity.com. And that's specifically on the website. Of course, you can follow me on LinkedIn, and that's where I spend most of my time. I do have a Facebook presence, but it's academically, it's a presence. It's there, but I'm really more active on LinkedIn.
It's a baseline.
Yeah, yeah, it exists, and there it is.
Awesome. That's 360-clarity.com.
That's
For
correct.
those listening, and we'll put all these links and everything that we've talked about in the show notes as well. So if you guys listen in your car, you can check that out on our website boxer.agency. Dr. Sam, is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't touched upon already? World peace, maybe, solving world hunger. I don't know, anything.
uh, we've had a pretty good array of topics. One thing that the maybe listeners have picked up on, and we talked about authenticity, is a sense of humor. And
Mhm.
people may see that in a job description once in a while, have a sense of humor. Well, that's a pretty subjective thing to put in there.
Yeah.
But I bring that to the table. I enjoy finding humor in all kinds of places. And if we can step back and appreciate our silliness, our mistakes for what they are, it's just most of us aren't saving lives. Yeah, have some fun with it, and not in a at somebody else's cost kind of way, but shoot, enjoy it, have fun, and by best you can, learn from even the silliness. And it's that's where I bring a lot of my humor and why I do it, because it just helps the day go a little bit better and it's more fun for my people.
I love it. I love it. I associate that and curiosity with the word childlike, as differentiated from
Yeah.
childish, right? Childlike
Right.
curiosity,
Right.
childlike silliness.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
just it's fun, it's light. Yeah, be goofy, be a goofball. Don't be afraid
Right.
of it.
Oh, exactly. So in my former work, I bought the whole office rubber band guns for Christmas one year.
Love it.
Because why not?
Perfect. 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 Awesome. Dr. Sam Jennings, 360-clarity.com. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you making the time to join me on this podcast. I've had a great time. It's a good conversation.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. It's been great to chat with you, and I hope we do it again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. And thank you to our listeners and viewers for joining us. We'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
Thank you.